G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. The global fight against global censorship is blowing up. Globally, of course. It's not just in Japan, but falsely reported was the fact that Japan has taken sanctions against Visa and MasterCard. While true, the reasons are not because of censorship, unfortunately. But there are those who are promising to take up the fight against Visa and MasterCard over censorship. I'll get into what has actually happened in Japan in a moment. But as you can see, the mainstream media is focusing on the Australian anti-porn group and how they have claimed victory against the porn, sick, brain, rotted PDF gamers, fetishists. Collective shout are lunatics. They're nuttier than a squirrel's lunch. Actually, they're nuttier than a squirrel's poop. Alright, so they are anti-pornography to an extent. They're just against the sexualization of women and girls, and that is sophistry to call them anti-pornography, because they do engage in what they call body positivity, in which, amongst many things, feature shirtless cowboys on their femme fantasy romance. They call it romance, of course, when you, the man, bendeth the knee and pay her rent and buy her dinner, and expect nothing in return, because you're a good little simp, and you have to be age appropriate. If you're a microsecond over 18, you can't date an 18-year-old girl. No, you have to date old women, because they deserve love. But if you're a day over 18 as a male, you're not allowed. A 30-year-old dating a 18-year-old is a PDF in their eyes. They are behind various nefarious campaigns over the years, including veganism to shut down meat processing. Yes, folks, they are anti-milk, anti-cow meat, but you notice they've never gone after the biggest killer of small animals, tofu farming, because it's all imported from China. Folks, this is a nefarious organisation with links to Islamist organisations who fund these lunatics, and as well as China, who funds these lunatics to sow discord in the West. Now, Steve's new petition that I reported on yesterday has blown up. Now, yesterday I tried to share the link, and it wouldn't let me have the link. I'm going to try and put it in today, but I've also had troubles loading the link myself. Now, I think that's government censorship, something to do with the Great Australian Firewall, which involves censorship. Yeah, Australia is heavily censored, just like China, except China admits to it. Now, a recent petition against Visa, MasterCard, and other activist groups have gotten dozens of signatures, and it's growing. In the last 24 hours, it's grown to over 30,000 signatures and growing. And of course, it only took 1,000 people to get these games removed, yet despite our massive weight of numbers and growing, those adult games remain removed from Steam. Some have already been censored, but as I reported on yesterday, though they removed their H content, they actually have lists on Reddit and growing around the world where you can download patches to disconnect those games from Steam and have your content restored so that you cannot be monitored by Steam or other parties. Now, of course, the EU has responded by saying these modifications are illegal, even though they're actually issued by the game manufacturers themselves. There is growing petitions also against the EU, who are also part of the global attack on anime. Why? Because the French had tried to start an anime industry in Montreal. People forget Captain Planet and all this other garbage tier childish propaganda was all produced by the EU and Ted Turner. But of course the EU, like all nefarious organisations, tend to keep their name off the billing list. That's why they're screaming about the cutting of US aid. A lot of this childish propaganda like Captain Planet, comrades, was actually produced with aid money meant for other projects. Now, Steam's publishing guidelines have remained, and payment processors such as MasterCard, Visa and PayPal have control over content. Not just sexual content, folks. All content. And they're coming after GTA 5, which is rather odd timing given that GTA 5 was meant to be retired. It's actually not been retired. GTA 5 is going to continue as a single-player game. And those who have GTA 5 online get to upgrade to GTA 6. But if you're shut down, that is millions of people shut off from adult content, even though you're an adult, because Granny is off her meds. Because Granny wants you to date her and not hot young girls, because as far as Granny's concerned, having sex and having children is a sin against God in her eyes. And baby Jesus should have been the last baby, she thinks. And the kingdom of heaven and the better world will only come when we're all extinct. These mass extinctionist fanatics, of course, are fed by foreign money. And of course they're happy to watch us go extinct, because they're not going to kill themselves off just to please Granny. Notice they're not going after dildos. They're going after sex dolls, folks. They're going after sex robots, but they're not going after female reproductive aids like dildos. No, they're not reproductive aids, of course not. Now, yeah, within 2 days, twice the number of signatures. It's blowing up in 3 days. So it's roughly growing at the rate of 10,000 a day. It needs to actually get way more than that. But it's not the only petition. There are many other petitions. But the behaviour is not just overreach, it's blatant hypocrisy, particularly where, as people have, I'm not the only one, but I pointed it out because a lot of people didn't mention, they make money off OnlyFans. They make more money off OnlyFans than porn games. This is about market manipulation. I've pointed this out time and time again. The collective shout is being used to manipulate the market. These women do not lose their jobs. They've put thousands of people out of work, but they'll never lose their jobs. You cannot walk away from Visa and MasterCard because they control the industry. You cannot say, oh, yeah, it's legal product, but how can you sell it if MasterCard won't allow the transaction? Activist groups never lose their jobs, but they cost other people their jobs. Transparent about the restrictions. Visa and MasterCard do not tell you what their content creative, what their process is and how they go about deciding who they censor. And often they've censored cultures because of their safety. Now, it's been widely reported that the Japanese have sanctioned Visa after censoring anime. Nope, this is actually 3 days ago a petition from... 3 days ago, Visa shut off Japanese payment processors from the rest of the internet. The banks petitioned the Japanese government because Visa was saying you have to use our platform only. So the Fair Trade Commission has obligated Visa to explain itself and adhere to corrective actions over suspicions that it planned to effectively force all Japanese credit companies, although it was actually all credit card companies. Japan was just the test run where they shut you off and say, oh, but our system's still available. But how can they shut other companies off? Yes, Visa controls other companies. That is what they're saying, but not saying out loud. Basically, forcing all credit card companies to use their credit authorization system. See, all the systems are linked, but my guess is Visa built it and all the others just share in it, and Visa just said, oops, we unplugged our partners by mistake, which is a big lie. But the Japanese Financial Trade Commission has also gone after Visa over fee abuse. That is also putting higher fees on non-Visa cards. Again, this is an antitrust action against Visa's monopolization of credit card verification, not over their worldwide business practices. Yet there is an administrative step to investigate Visa for its censorship and market manipulation. They did not, however, that may or may not involve their censorship of the war on porn. Now, feminists and religious crusaders and the so-called alpha male movement, which is a lie. The so-called alpha male movement they're talking about is actually Saudi Arabia. Alright, so for decades there's been an argument against pornography, and once viewed as a fringe moral crusade, it is now a mainstream force made of feminists and influencers, many of them politicians. Supreme Court is going to decide whether a Texas law mirroring... Now, why is age verification an issue? They're not verifying your age. They are forcing you to hand over all your information to them, including your password and username, forcing you to use tracking and collect any and all data they deem necessary, including access to your camera. And how many data breaches have they had? Just Visa alone. Folks, they are underreporting the information and misreporting the information. But it's not just about age verification, okay? It's about lewd and obscene content. Free speech advocates for a long time that more people visited porn sites than TikTok, Zoom, Amazon, OpenAI, or Netflix. And it's OnlyFans redistributed the power of adult content into the hands of a few. Now, actually, OnlyFans surpassed Pornhub after they shut down Pornhub temporarily. This has always been strategic moves to shut down Patreon and other sites, funneling people to only. You think you think it was all by accident that they shut down Patreon for a month, forcing people to hand over their ID? Boom, they go to other sites and never come back. The anti-pornography movement is a deliberate move to funnel people because they're not even going to wait a day. They're not even. Those who watch free porn are also under attack because Google's going to start censoring that. They keep calling it a public health issue. And they keep telling you that it ruins jobs and kills your brain, rots your brain, and turns you into a misogynist. And it's a new drug. And all the academics who pontificate their wild conspiracy theories. Yet none of these are put to the test. And this is not science. Although Utah has declared pornography a public health crisis. Again, these are lunatics who are abusing. Again, I want to see all the I want to see these people's private collections. I bet you there's a lot of cowboy porn in there. And gay porn. Remember, they have not gone after homosexual sites. They've not gone after furries. They've not gone after OnlyFans. They've not gone after female fantasy romance novels. Well, they don't actually use the word penis. They talk about throbbing robs and intense passion. See, it's about language and control of language and control of who gets to succeed. Remember, women have a bigger porn addiction than men. Women go out and buy 100 sex toys for every male blow-up doll sold. You look at any sex shop, it is full of female fantasy items. And remember, they're only going after behavior like choking, slapping, and spitting. And young women's distrust in young men. No, this is about justifying old granny having the hots for a 15-year-old boy and calling it empowerment. This is all about manipulating the public sphere. So the talk about porn is always about men and underage girls, not about the reality of what is really going on. And notice, it's always, or every time, it is always some egotistical maniac professor who's looking to sell a book, get some doctoral thesis funded, to get herself some job for life so that she could parasite off society, keeping you all safe. The myth of sex addiction. There's not a single study that shows casual changes to the brain from porn. We know that there's no link between erectile dysfunction and masturbation. There is actually no science behind Andrew Tate beyond Andrew Tate's ego. There's undeniable success, however, and undeniable that there's an end game. And this is not just about Republicans. There's a lot of Democrats involved in this as well. Okay? But this is about damaging the Republican brand and damaging remember, the porn industry has always been under attack, right? Your rights have always been under attack. But remember, folks, California wanted to lower the age of consent. You have not heard a peep from collective shout about California wanting to lower the age of consent. Or the fact that Canada has provisions in some states for girls as young as 14. Same in California. They want girls as young as 14 to be able to sell their bodies on OnlyFans, as long as there's no physical contact. So do not think for a second that Collective Shout is actually fighting pornography. This is all about the monopolization of pornography by OnlyFans and a select group of companies such as Visa and MasterCard controlling the market. Because the reality is they want to take away not just they want to take away your games. They want to be able to come into your house to look for porn under the guise of protecting the child. While they pump your child full of anti-puberty blockers so they cannot be able to reproduce and have no sex drive. So they grow up to be good little factory workers as they genocide you so that they can finally replace you with fair-minded individuals. Because Granny don't care, because she ain't got grandkids. She's a lesbian. She's a genocider. Now, the fight against pornography involves various groups from various perspectives. Some, they want to infringe on free speech, but the fight against pornography censorship also involves different groups. Now, the main group is arguing that it infringes on free speech and the rights of free expression under the First Amendment. Others contend that censorship harms women in society. The debate is rather complex. Smooth-brained people always take the path of least resistance. They see pornography as a threat, therefore they want to remove pornography. There will always be those who are offended by pornography and those turned on by it. Those who are not, but the problem is, those who are offended by pornography are meddlers, and they want to meddle in your life. So they use their bigotry and their fanaticism combined into a zealot-like state where no argument is good enough for them. They will always deny your arguments as baseless and lacking evidence. But the arguments against censorship primarily is free speech. Even if pornography is deemed harmful, it's still a violation of free speech, because free speech guarantee is the government can't censor you. But the problem is, as the advocates say, oh no, it's not the government's censoring you, it's the right of MasterCard and Visa. Yet they won't allow competition. So it is censorship by the government through proxy. Slippery slope. Once you start with pornography, it leads to censorship of other forms of expression. Don't believe me? Look at what happened in China. The feminists argue that anti-pornography is used to silence women and limit their autonomy. Yes. Women actually fought against censorship on pornography because for many women, they made a lot of money as sex symbols and selling their body legally, though most people don't get this, but it used to be a very big industry for women, in particularly in California, to pose in their underwear for photographers. and photographers are paying between $20 and $50. Jim, that's a lot of money in the 1950s to take somebody's photograph. Lack of evidence of harm. There is many, not some, but many who argue that pornography... some argue that pornography causes harm. There are many who says there is insufficient evidence. The studies are too narrow and subjective. While there is plenty of research that says that pornography actually reduces harm. There was a study being done in Australia on using sex dolls to reduce sex offenders. Guess what happened? Collective Shout had that shut down, and sex offences started to rise again. See, these people are obsessed with perfection, and that all you need is prayer. I'm sorry, but for that, zealots think everybody could just become like them. That is not true. There are multiple personality types, but the smooth brains think, no, you're just godless. You have to conform to their personality type. Yes, they're autistic. Now, censorship can be ineffective. Yeah. But that's why they want chips to go in your head and see what you think so that they can censor you. Don't believe me? China is experimenting with Neuralink to shut down negative thoughts about the CCP. And Elon Musk can't do anything about it because he lost control of the technology. Never built a technology factory in China and never hired which is more of a threat, pornography or censorship? The vast majority think, even though the vast majority of countries in the world think pornography is evil, the vast majority of people in the West think that censorship is evil. And does pornography lead to child sexual abuse? No. While pornography is used by offenders, it doesn't mean the pornography was created for, and they do share pornography created. But remember, if pornography created the abuser, why do they need to create more on their own content? Clearly, pornography isn't enough for them, so they create their own content. So if you remove pornography, what's going to happen? They're going to create their own content anyway. It's going to lead to more abuse because they have less content to find, not more. And remember, it is not actually an addiction. It's like the people who think they need marijuana every day to calm down. No, that's their smooth brain being lazy. Now, pornography does have a calming effect. It doesn't lead to aggression or... You don't have to tell a man this, though. That's the problem. You don't have to tell a man that as soon as he's done his business that he's now relaxed and happy. But that's the problem, isn't it? You're talking to smooth brains, to immature, ill-advised, ill-formed people who are chasing votes, folks. This is all about chasing the votes of the lipstick mafia. And the lipstick mafia still have a huge grip on women and how they vote using fear tactics. Fight pornography is a losing war. It's like the war on drugs. You make pornography illegal, you are now empowering the mafia, like back in the 1950s, where women are now making hundreds of dollars a day for organised crime to pose for photographs. Because back in the 1950s, women were doing this on their own, but now it's going to be a huge industry in crime-ridden areas of the world, and Saudi Arabia and other countries. Well, actually, it is already a huge industry. It's already $1 billion industry in Saudi Arabia, where women all across North Africa are abused to create pornography. But see, it isn't because of the pornography industry, it's the censorship. Because they can't legally make it, they kidnap and abuse women to make it. decades battle over adult content is driven by organised crime, by religious fanatics, by the lipstick mafia, by the old ladies who want to meddle in your every aspect of your life, and by the politicians chasing votes. The moral crusade is so misunderstood. But smooth brains will always take the lowest common denominator and use Jesus as their weapon while they're really fighting a war against Christianity on behalf of the anti-Christian, atheists, Muslims and communists who are really funding this movement. See, you don't have to tell a Christian to be anti-pornography. If a Christian doesn't want to buy pornography, they don't buy it. But Christians have often understood that you don't fight evil, right, externally. You fight evil internally. You fight against the evil within. And only when there's an external threat. But pornography... But remember, the Sistine Chapel had naked women. The Christians of the 50s and 60s were told and shown this, and they suddenly realised that that pornography is laying eyes on God's work and admiring God's work. So they don't actually, and a lot of people don't get this about pornography either. A lot of hardcore pornography, people get bored of very quickly. Most people, it's a dying industry on its own. Okay, most hardcore pornography gets nowhere very quickly. Some of these women have made hundreds of movies and they've walked away. The best thing to do is let people make their own decisions, folks. But feminists and religious crusaders and the so-called alpha male movement are all, and they're not really alpha male movement. They are. Andrew Tate is a soft front for Islam. This is about controlling you and controlling what you see. Thank you all for watching. I know there's lots of big channels out there telling you lies. I'm trying to bring you the truth, and I bring the receipts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and please support the channel. You support the channel on Patreon. I have two. One for my art, one for my writing, and one for my RPG, based on my writing. And of course, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, in the description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Please and thank you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.